Somewhere tonight, someone is about to lose everything because of one decision made by a person who was never supposed to turn on them. Losing your job is bad enough. Losing it to someone who used to feel like family is worse. That's essentially what happened to Seneca in the year 65 AD, except in his case, family meant the emperor of Rome, and losing his job meant losing his life. A centurion arrives at his villa outside the city. He isn't bringing news. He's bringing an order. Nero, the boy Seneca had spent years personally tutoring and guiding toward the throne, has decided that his old teacher needs to die tonight, and it needs to happen by his own hand. Seneca doesn't argue. He doesn't beg. He asks for something to write with. How does a person stay that calm, in that exact room, facing that exact ending? Seneca wasn't the only Stoic who had to answer that question. In less than 50 years, at least 3 of Rome's most respected philosophers were ordered killed, exiled, or silenced by the very men whose empires they lived inside. Nero exiled Musonius Rufus to a bare rock of an island in the Aegean over nothing more than a suspicion. A generation later, Emperor Domitian threw every philosopher out of Italy in a single decree, including a former slave named Epictetus, who had to rebuild his entire life and his entire school somewhere else from nothing. In Rome, being close to power was never safe. Being good at philosophy made you a witness, and witnesses were inconvenient. You've probably never had an emperor order your death. But you've likely felt a smaller version of this, a boss who can end your career in one conversation. A single person whose opinion of you can undo years of work. Living your life aware that someone above you holds power they never really earned and might use badly. That feeling, being powerless in front of someone who could ruin you, isn't new. The Stoics didn't get to avoid it. They built their entire philosophy while standing inside it. So, what did they actually do in the room when the moment came? By the end of this, you'll know exactly what Seneca did in his final hours, and why it lines up almost perfectly with a technique modern psychology still uses to help people manage fear. Start with Seneca, because his story is the one we know best. What almost nobody mentions is that he had been rehearsing that exact night for decades before it arrived. In his letters, he described setting aside days to eat like a poor man, sleep on a hard floor, wear rough clothing, not out of discipline for its own sake, but so real poverty would never be able to surprise him if it came. He called it premeditatio malorum, rehearsing the bad thing in advance. He imagined losing his position. He imagined exile. He imagined his own death in detail over and over years before Nero ever gave the order. Small, controlled doses of pain, on purpose, so the full-sized version couldn't catch him off guard. That night, it didn't. When the centurion delivered Nero's order, Seneca first asked to revise his will, a very normal, very human instinct. When that was refused, he turned to the friends who had gathered around him and told them that since he had no estate left to leave them, he would leave them something worth more, the example of how he had lived. Then he comforted his wife, Paulina, who wanted to die at his side. Then he opened his veins. Because he was old and thin, the bleeding was slow, so he kept dictating his last thoughts to a scribe the entire time, the way you might keep talking through a meeting that was simply running long. Sit with that for a second. Seneca didn't discover courage in that room. He'd spent his whole life quietly deciding, in advance, what he would and wouldn't let himself panic over. That night just collected on a debt he had already agreed to pay years earlier. Which is, in its own dark way, a little funny. It turns out the single most dangerous job in Nero's Rome wasn't being his enemy. It was being his favorite teacher. Epictetus reached the same calm through a completely different road. When Domitian ordered every philosopher out of Rome, Epictetus didn't fight it, didn't petition to stay, didn't try to prove his loyalty. He packed up and left for Nicopolis, on the coast of Greece, and simply started teaching again from nothing. No recorded bitterness, no campaign to return home. Musonius Rufus, exiled by a different emperor entirely, did the same thing on his island. Kept thinking, kept teaching whoever showed up to listen, kept living by the same standard whether his audience was a room full of senators or nobody at all. Here's the pattern underneath every one of these stories, the one thing all these men actually agreed on. An emperor can control your location, your title, your property, even the hour you die. He cannot control the one thing that actually decides whether you suffer, your judgment about what's happening to you. Nero's order was never inside Seneca's control. Seneca's response to it always was. Domitian's decree was never inside Epictetus's control. Where and how he rebuilt his life always was. Hold two images in your head at once. An old man in a Roman bath, calmly dictating his final words while his life quietly drains out of him. And someone, right now, somewhere, opening an email that starts with, "We need to talk," feeling their whole chest tighten before they've even finished reading the sentence. 1900 years apart. The exact same fork in the road. Panic or presence. Almost nobody chooses presence by accident. Seneca didn't either. He'd practiced choosing it 1,000 times before the one night it actually counted. And that's the part that should genuinely surprise you. We assume Seneca stayed calm because he was somehow built differently than the rest of us. Braver, colder, less attached to his own life. He wasn't. He stayed calm because when the real event finally arrived, it had nothing left to teach him that his own imagination hadn't already rehearsed first. The night that looked terrifying to everyone watching from the outside was, to Seneca, simply the version he had already lived through in his head, 1,000 quiet mornings earlier. He hadn't avoided the fear. He'd already spent it in advance on purpose. So, if you've ever caught yourself imagining the worst version of a hard conversation before it happens, losing a job, disappointing someone, being humiliated in front of people whose opinion matters to you, you weren't spiraling. You were doing, badly and by accident, exactly what Seneca did on purpose every single day of his life. The only real difference between his version and yours is intention. He wasn't rehearsing to worry. He was rehearsing so the real thing, whenever it came, would find nothing left to take. Seneca died that night. Nero got exactly what he ordered. And somehow, history still calls it Seneca's finest hour, not Nero's. That's worth remembering the next time someone with power over you tries to make you feel small. They can win the moment. They almost never win the story. But here's the question that comes right after this one. If rehearsing disaster in advance is what lets Seneca die without panic, what did that same habit cost Marcus Aurelius, the one Stoic who actually became emperor himself, every single morning for 19 years?